Dale Mercer had spent 30 years in the same garage, 3 decades of grease-stained hands, busted knuckles, and long nights under the hood of a car. He had built that place from the ground up, turning Hickory Auto Repair into one of the most trusted names in Millfield. Customers didn't just come for repairs, they came because they knew Dale wouldn't cheat them. But none of that mattered today, because today he was being thrown out like garbage. Dale stood in front of Trevor Vance's desk, the man who had taken over the shop after old man Harlan passed away. Trevor was younger, sharp-dressed, and cared more about profit margins than people. He leaned back in his expensive chair, tapping his pen against the desk. "I'm sorry, Dale. Business is business." His tone was casual, like he was asking Dale to pass the salt at dinner. Dale clenched his jaw. 30 years, Trevor. I trained half the guys in that shop. I kept this place running when Harlan got sick. And you're just letting me go?" Trevor sighed, like this was exhausting for him. "Look, you're great at what you do, no doubt. But times are changing. We need younger mechanics who can work faster, take lower wages. I have investors to answer to. It's not personal." "Not personal?" Dale felt a tightness in his chest, but he refused to let Trevor see it. He wouldn't give him the satisfaction. "So what now?" Dale asked, his voice steady. "You expect me to pack up my tools and walk out like I was never here?" Trevor shrugged. "Pretty much. There's a severance package, a few months' pay. Consider it a thank you for your service." Dale let out a slow breath, his hands balled into fists, but he forced himself to stay calm. Trevor wasn't worth losing his dignity over. He turned, heading for the door. But just before he stepped out, he stopped. He looked over his shoulder, his voice low but firm. "You just made the worst mistake of your life." Trevor chuckled, shaking his head. "We'll see about that." Dale walked out without looking back. By the time he got to his station, his toolbox was already packed. His name, the one that had been on a plaque above his workspace for decades, was gone, erased. The younger mechanics barely made eye contact as he walked by. Some looked guilty, others relieved it wasn't them. Outside, the cold wind hit his face as he stepped into the parking lot. His old truck sat in the same spot it always had, but this time, it felt different. He wasn't coming back. Dale threw his toolbox into the truck bed and got in. He gripped the steering wheel, staring ahead. 30 years of his life, gone in minutes. He turned the key. The engine rumbled to life. He had no idea what came next. Dale drove aimlessly for hours, Millfield streetlights blurring past his windshield. His hands stayed tight on the wheel, his knuckles white. 30 years in one place, and now he had nowhere to go. The thought burned in his chest like a fire he couldn't put out. He hadn't just lost a job, he'd lost his purpose. He finally pulled into the driveway of his small house, the same one he'd lived in for 20 years. The porch light flickered as he stepped out of the truck, toolbox in hand. Inside, the silence hit him hard. No sound of an engine running, no smell of oil or metal, just emptiness. He set his toolbox down on the kitchen table and sank into a chair. His hands ran through his graying hair. He'd never planned for this. He'd always thought he'd retire from Hickory Auto Repair, maybe train a new generation, pass down the knowledge he'd built over the years. But Trevor had taken that from him in seconds. His eyes landed on an old photo hanging on the wall. It was him and Harlan, the original owner of the shop, standing in front of the garage when they first opened it. Harlan had been more than a boss. He'd been a mentor, a friend, someone who'd believed in hard work and loyalty. If he were alive today, he'd be ashamed of what had happened. Dale clenched his jaw and looked away. He needed to figure out what was next. The next morning, he woke up early out of habit. His body was used to the routine, getting dressed, heading to the shop, working until his hands ached. But today, there was nowhere to go. He sat at the kitchen table with a cup of black coffee, staring at his calloused hands. He'd never done anything else. Then a thought crossed his mind. He grabbed his phone and scrolled through his contacts. There had to be someone, some shop, some old friend who needed a mechanic. One by one, he called the numbers. One by one, he got the same answer. "We're not hiring. Budgets are tight. We'll keep you in mind." Dale exhaled sharply, setting the phone down. He'd never felt this useless in his life. That afternoon, he drove around Millfield, stopping by every shop he could find. Some places had kids barely out of school working the bays. Others had owners who looked at his age and saw a liability, not an asset. Hours passed, and hope drained from him with every rejection. As he sat in his truck outside the last shop on his list, something caught his eye. A small, rundown garage on the edge of town called Pinecrest Auto. The sign was faded, barely readable, and the lot was empty. But Dale recognized the name. It had belonged to an old mechanic he used to know, someone who'd been around as long as him. He pulled into the lot, curiosity tugging at him. The building looked abandoned, but the door was unlocked. Inside, the place was a mess. Dust-covered tools, broken-down cars, and an air of neglect. It looked like no one had worked here in years. And then an idea sparked in his mind. He'd spent 30 years building someone else's business. Maybe it was time to build his own. Dale stood in the middle of the dusty garage, his boots planted firmly on the cracked concrete floor. The place smelled like old oil and forgotten potential. He ran a hand over a rusted toolbox, his fingers tracing the outline of something that had once been great but had been left to rot. He could feel it in his bones. This place had history, the kind that couldn't be bought, only earned. For years, he'd put his sweat and soul into making Trevor's shop the best in town. And where had that gotten him? Tossed aside, forgotten. But this place, this was different. Dale walked to the garage door and shoved it open. Sunlight streamed in, illuminating the dust swirling in the air. He could almost see it, the way it could be. Cars lined up outside. People bringing their vehicles to someone they could trust. A mechanic who wouldn't cheat them. His own shop. The thought made his pulse quicken. But then reality settled in. It was a wreck. The equipment was outdated. The lift was rusted. And who knew if the wiring even worked? It would take more money than he had just to get it running. And then there was the biggest problem. Customers. How would he get people to trust a new shop when Hickory Auto Repair had a chokehold on the entire town? Most of Dale's old customers still went there, and Trevor would make sure none of them left. Dale exhaled, rubbing the back of his neck. Maybe this was a mistake. Maybe he was just chasing a dream that was never going to happen. Then he heard the sound of tires rolling up outside. His stomach tensed. No one should be here. He stepped outside and saw an old man climbing out of a beat-up pickup truck. His clothes were worn, his face weathered, but Dale recognized him instantly. Ray Dawson. Dale hadn't seen him in years, but he'd once been a legend in the industry. He'd owned a shop back in the day, one that people drove miles just to visit because they knew he was the best. Dale had learned a lot from watching him work. Ray leaned against the truck, eyeing Dale with a knowing smirk. Word around town as you got kicked to the curb. Dale crossed his arms. News travels fast. Ray chuckled. Always does in a town like Millfield. His gaze shifted toward the garage. So what's the plan? Dale hesitated. I don't know if I have one. Ray scoffed. That's not the Dale Mercer I know. You're the best damn mechanic in this town. Always have been. Dale let out a slow breath. Even if I fix this place up, no one's going to come. Trevor's already taken them all. Ray nodded as if he'd expected that answer. Then he walked to the back of his truck, lifted the tailgate, and pulled out a battered toolbox. I say we change that. Dale frowned. We? Ray grinned. I might be old, but I still know my way around an engine. And I've got something Trevor doesn't. He patted the toolbox. Loyal customers who've been waiting for a reason to leave that place. Dale felt something stir in his chest. Maybe this could work. Dale stood there staring at Ray, the weight of the moment sinking in. This wasn't just some passing conversation. Ray meant business. And if there was one thing Dale had learned in his 30 years as a mechanic, it was that men like Ray didn't waste time on lost causes. Dale exhaled, glancing back at the dusty garage. You really think people will come here? Ray smirked. They will if they know you're running it. People are tired of Trevor's nonsense. They just need an excuse to walk away. Dale wanted to believe that. But starting a shop from the ground up was no small feat. It required money, tools, equipment, things he didn't have. Ray must have read his mind. He opened his toolbox and pulled out a faded checkbook. I got some savings, Not much, but enough to get this place running. Dale's eyes widened. Ray, I can't take your money. You're not taking it. I'm investing in a shop that actually cares about people. You fix the cars. I'll handle the business side. Ray clapped a hand on Dale's shoulder. We'll make this work. Dale swallowed hard. He'd spent the last 2 weeks feeling like his life was over. But here was Ray, handing him a lifeline. A second chance. He looked at the garage one more time, picturing it not as the rundown mess it was, but as the thriving shop it could be. He turned back to Ray. All right, let's do this. And just like that, the spark was lit. For the next few days, Dale and Ray got to work. They cleaned out the garage, scrubbing years of dust and grime from every surface. Ray made calls to old contacts, securing deals on used equipment. Dale spent hours repairing the rusted lift, rewiring the lights, and making sure everything in the shop was functional. Word started to spread. A few of Dale's old customers stopped by, curious. They watched as he worked, remembering why they'd trusted him for years. Then one morning, a woman pulled up in a minivan, her face tense with worry. I heard you were open. My car's been making a noise. But Hickory Auto told me it would take 2 weeks just to look at it. Dale nodded. Pop the hood. Within minutes, he diagnosed the issue. A loose belt. A 10-minute fix. When he handed the keys back, she was stunned. Trevor told me I needed a full repair. He was going to charge me hundreds. Dale wiped his hands on a rag. You're good to go. No charge for something that small. Her eyes filled with gratitude. I'm telling everyone about this place. And she did. Within hours, more cars started rolling in. People came in complaining about how Trevor had overcharged them, how he'd pushed unnecessary repairs. Dale and Ray worked tirelessly, fixing cars honestly and fairly. The trust was coming back. But Trevor wasn't happy. That evening, as Dale locked up, a black luxury car pulled into the lot. The door swung open, and out stepped Trevor, his face unreadable, but his eyes burning with something Dale couldn't quite place. Trevor took a slow step forward. So this is what you've been up to. Dale crossed his arms. You seem surprised. Trevor smirked, but there was no humor in it. You made a mistake, old man. Ray stepped up beside Dale. The only mistake was thinking you could keep running a business by cheating people. Trevor's jaw tightened. You're not going to last. Dale met his stare. We'll see about that. Trevor chuckled darkly, then climbed back into his car and drove off. Ray exhaled. He's not done yet. Dale nodded. He knew Trevor too well. This was just the beginning. The next morning, Dale arrived at the shop early, but something felt off. As he stepped closer, his stomach twisted. The front door was wide open. The lock had been busted. His heart pounded as he rushed inside. Tools were scattered everywhere. Drawers yanked open. The register was missing. His toolbox, the one he'd owned for decades, was gone. Ray ran in behind him, stopping dead in his tracks. No! He scanned the wreckage, his face tightening with rage. Dale clenched his fists. He knew exactly who'd done this. Trevor. It was the only explanation. Trevor had seen the shop rising, customers leaving his garage to come here. He'd warned Dale that he wouldn't last. And now this. Ray kicked a broken chair aside. We need to call the cops. Dale exhaled sharply, shaking his head. We have no proof. He'll deny everything. Ray was fuming. So we just let this go? Dale looked around at the destruction, his chest heavy. No! They wouldn't let it go. By noon, word had spread through Millfield. Customers arrived, gasping at the state of the shop. One woman, Mrs. Wilkins, crossed her arms. Trevor did this, didn't he? Dale didn't confirm it, but his silence was enough. People whispered, shaking their heads in disgust. A few men stepped forward. We're not letting him get away with this. We'll help you rebuild. Dale's throat tightened. He'd spent 30 years working for a company that tossed him aside. And now, after just a few weeks, people were standing up for him. By the end of the day, the shop was cleaner than ever. Someone donated tools. Another dropped off a new register. The town had spoken. Trevor had tried to destroy them. Instead, he'd given them more strength. But Trevor wasn't finished yet. That night, as Dale locked up, he noticed a car parked across the street, headlights off, a figure sitting inside watching. Frank turned to Ray. We need to be ready. He's not done. The next morning, Dale arrived at the shop early, his mind still on the car that had been watching them the night before. He had a feeling this was far from over. As he stepped inside, a sense of determination settled over him. Trevor could try to scare them, try to break them, but he wouldn't win. Ray arrived a few minutes later, carrying 2 coffees. "You sleep at all?" Dale chuckled, shaking his head. "Too much on my mind." Ray handed him a cup. "Well, get ready, because we're about to get real busy." Dale frowned. "What do you mean?" Ray smirked, pulling out his phone. "People are talking, Dale." Word spread all over town about what happened. They know what Trevor did, and they're done with him. "I've been getting messages all morning. People want their cars fixed, and they want you to do it." Dale barely had time to respond before a car pulled up. Then another, and another. Within minutes, the lot was full. One man stepped forward, shaking Dale's hand. "I've been going to Trevor for years, but not anymore. I'm not giving my money to someone who tries to destroy honest people." A woman behind him nodded. "Same here. He charged me for a repair I didn't even need. I should have come here sooner." Dale looked at the growing crowd, overwhelmed. People weren't just bringing their business. They were bringing their trust. For the next few hours, Dale and Ray worked nonstop, fixing cars, changing oil, replacing tires. Every time Dale looked up, more cars were pulling in. The shop was alive in a way he'd never imagined. Then, just as Dale was wiping his hands on a rag, a familiar black luxury car pulled into the lot. Trevor. He stepped out, his expression unreadable. For a moment, he just stood there, watching the busy shop, the happy customers, the life buzzing around him. Then he walked up to Dale. "You proved your point." Dale crossed his arms. "Did I?" Trevor exhaled, glancing around. "You took everything I built." Dale shook his head. You destroyed what you built. I just gave people another option." Trevor stared at him for a long moment. Then, without another word, he turned and walked back to his car. As he drove away, Dale felt something he hadn't felt in weeks. Peace. Ray clapped him on the back. "You did it, Dale." Dale looked around at the shop, the people, the life they'd created. "No," he said, smiling. "We did it." The lesson from this story is powerful. Integrity and hard work always win in the end. Dale dedicated 30 years of his life to his work, only to be discarded without a second thought. But instead of giving up, he stood his ground, rebuilt himself, and earned the respect of an entire town. His journey proves that when you do the right thing, people notice, and support will come in ways you never expect. Trevor, on the other hand, thought power and greed would protect him. He believed he could destroy someone's future without consequences. But in the end, he lost everything. Not because Dale fought him, but because his own dishonesty caught up with him.